and welcome to Courage to Rise, Walk, Recover. Because many of you may be living with the pain of losing a loved one, on this show I strive to increase your awareness of others who have also endured a loss. The loss of a loved one is not easy, but it is a process of recovery for some. On this show, we share insight and hopefully answer some questions that you may have after losing someone that you love. Today, as we continue the discussion on loss, I am happy to have my very special guest, TEDx speaker, story expert, and founder of Wealth Through Stories, Linda Olson. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be with you.
Great, and it's great to have you. So, Linda, since you're here, can you go ahead and share a few things about yourself first?
Oh, certainly. I grew up in Midwest Canada, but I now live in Southern California. My husband and I just celebrated our 39th anniversary.
Okay.
And the best part of my story is 5 delightful little grandchildren.
Yes. That's excellent. And I know that's always a joy for a grandparent, is to talk about the grandchildren.
Yes, it is.
So, Linda, I understand that you experienced the death of your 2-year-old brother at the age of 14. Can you share more about that story with us today?
Oh, I can. It is the story that has literally changed my life. As you said, I was 14 years of age, and through a tractor accident, my little 2-year-old brother was killed. I was the one driving the tractor. So you can probably only imagine, not only did my world fall apart, but certainly my family and anybody close to us. I grew up in a small farming community, maybe about 500 people, where word spreads very quickly. And it just devastated all of us. Devastated. We just didn't even know how to go on. The hardest thing was, how do you just get out of bed when it's like, what's there to get out of bed for,
So, Linda, let me ask you, from the viewpoint of a 14-year-old child that has to go through such a tragedy, how did that impact your young life?
And it impacted me in a major way. It was my first month of high school, and that was not many people want to be 14 anymore. That alone is a hard enough place.
Yes.
But I actually went to a little country school, the same school my dad went to, grades 1 through 8, 30 students, 1 teacher. So now transitioning to high school was a major transition. We were bused into town, and 75 students in just the 9th grade alone. And so that alone was big enough. But now I was a pretty quiet and inhibited child, but that to me, I just, because of the emotional pain, I just withdrew even more, trying so hard to just keep going, doing the right thing. But the hardest part was there was no one around that could help me walk through my grief. Nobody knew. It's not that they didn't care, but they didn't understand grief.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess that was another question I wanted to ask too, because I would imagine the family dynamic sort of shifted during that time. What were some of the struggles, even with the family? And I imagine that your parents probably would have been your help, but could you explain more on that side, the family dynamic?
Oh, absolutely. Part of it was the communication in the family was not good to begin with. And I had another brother and 3 sisters. And so basically, not only did I withdraw, but they withdrew. And I grew up in a culture where emotions were repressed. So now we held everything inside. Nobody talked about it. I mean, I'd get up and go to the breakfast table, and the only word spoken was, "Pass me the jam." I mean, so it was so hard because there was no one to talk to. And my relatives that were around, I mean, they would come, they would bring food. Of course, nobody was hungry, but you still have to eat something.
Right.
But, and they were there, but nobody understood that what I needed and my family needed more than anything was just to be able to talk about their pain. And they were thinking that if they ask us about the pain, it will just trigger more pain. And so they didn't ask, thinking they were doing the best thing by not asking. And, like I said, not only myself, but my parents, my family, my parents didn't know how to deal with it. How the marriage even stayed together is nothing short of a miracle.
Okay.
I mean, they, both tried to cope the best they could. Everybody, that's all we were doing was coping. Yeah.
Okay, so what today I would like to do today is kind of shine the light on maybe the lack of communication, if you would. So I know you mentioned you had therapy and the light kind of shined upon you once you took the therapy. So if you could just kind of walk the audience through how therapy was such a healing process for you, because I want people to understand, and I know many people may not want to talk about the grief, talk about the loss, but that's actually, it's therapeutic, it's helpful, it's healthy. So since you walked through the very process, could you just tell us what some of those benefits were for you?
Absolutely. It wasn't until it was 15 years later that I went for therapy, because at the time there wasn't even, nobody knew about even support groups or therapy at all.
Yes.
And it was at that time, actually, I moved to Southern California to get my degree in marriage and family therapy. And as part of the program, they required us to be in a certain amount of personal therapy. And it was really the best thing that could have happened to me. And my counselor was so intuitive and so in tune. She heard the first day when she just basically asked me to share a little bit about my life, and I kind of skimmed over the accident. And she says, "Let's go back there." And she started asking me about it. And and what she said is, then she said, "We will deal with this when you are ready." And a few months later, I said something that she said, "You're ready now, aren't you?" And I said, "I think so." And so what she actually did, it was a very, very difficult day, but she walked me through in slow motion the entire experience. And I sobbed from such depth, I didn't know if I'd ever recover. And then she said, "I don't want you to drive home like this." She said, "I have a separate waiting room. I want you to wait there until you are ready to drive home." And it was then that the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and he said, "Has God forgiven you?" And I said, "Yes." And then he asked, have your parents forgiven you? And I said, "I believe they have." And then was the big question, what keeps you from forgiving yourself? And I didn't have an answer. And then he asked me something even bigger. He said, "Are you bigger than God?" And I said, "No, I'm not bigger than God. I've never considered myself bigger than God."
Okay.
And then he said, "Can you trust God to help you forgive yourself?"
Okay.
And finally, I got on my knees and I said, "With God as my witness, God, help me, give me the courage to forgive myself." And he did. And when I got up, I'll tell you, I didn't drive home that day. I flew home. I tell you,
Wow.
it was such a huge emotional load that was lifted. So that was
Wow.
a huge breakthrough. Along with that, my therapist also helped me just um, face the fear, face the pain, face the grief, the sadness, whenever it would come up, to just learn to face it, just whatever was surfacing at that point. Of
Okay.
course, at that time I was talking to her, but if it would be another time, to find someone to just talk to pray with, to cry with, whatever it was. And that was a big part. It was just facing all these emotions and all the pain. Yes.
Amen. And thanks for that. Just sharing even the spiritual side, because so many things we cannot get through without the help of God. So thank you for sharing that. And it just sounds like, I believe many times we try to run from our situations, or we try to maybe put them in a box and hide them away. So your example today just lets us know, once again, you pretty much have to walk through your issues and talk about them in order to gain control over them even. So it sounds like you finally found your way to rise, walk, and recover from that. So thank you for just sharing that information, even about your therapist, how important. So the various levels, the spiritual, the social, the mental, the emotional, and how she was able to help you to tap into all of that. So thank you so much for that. Now that you've actually come through the other side, we see that you have recovered from it. So would you say that that was the pivotal place, was going to the therapist or speaking to God? What was that moment? And you could actually throw your hands up and say, finally, 15 years later, I'm in the place of total freedom and release.
Well, interestingly enough, that was definitely a pivotal point and a major breakthrough, but that wasn't the end of me walking through the process at all. And I can share that with you. It was many years later, and I was going for a little walk in the neighborhood with my husband, and I found myself having this shortness of breath. So I went to my chiropractor, he had worked with me for many years, and he knew all about this process. And he checked me over, and he said, there's nothing wrong with you except that you're still dealing with the brokenness of your little brother. And at that point, I was frustrated, and I said, when is this ever going to be over? And then he said, have you read the book, Heaven is for Real? And at that point I hadn't, and I said, no. He said, it's a simple, easy reading book. I'd like you to pick it up this weekend and read it and come and see me this week. So I did. And when I came back, I said, you're right. It was really healing. And then he said something I will never forget. He said, when you had a conversation with your little brother, you will be completely healed. And I thought, wow, because I had worked with him probably for 25 plus years, I trusted him, but he had never said, and I didn't know, that was actually a prophetic word that God had given him for me. And when I walked out, I thought, okay, what am I supposed to do? Do I just start talking? What do I do? Well, a few days later, my husband and I were going for a little mini vacation to the beach. And I took my computer along because I do a lot of journaling on my computer. And I thought, God is doing something big and I don't want to miss it. So as I was just writing down just what I shared with you, all of a sudden the tears just started flowing. And all I can describe is it was a vision where I was hugging my little brother and I said, Billy, I miss you so much. And he said, Nina, I miss you too. And I asked Jesus why we couldn't be together. And Jesus said, my work on earth is done, but he still has more for you to do. So just do everything he asks you to do, and then we'll be together forever and ever and ever. And I thought, wow. And then he said, there's one more thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, I don't want you to be sad anymore. He said, I am so happy here. I couldn't be happier. He said, please don't be sad. He said, I walk with Jesus. I talk with Jesus. I skip with Jesus. He said, I am so happy. And there's so many kids to play with. He said, please don't be sad anymore. And so I said, okay. I glanced at the clock. It was 2 minutes after midnight. That new day was the 45th anniversary of the accident.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And then the very next morning, my husband and I were taking a little drive along the coast, and we stopped at the first stop sign. There was a red half-ton truck right in front of us, and on his back window, he had a sticker, and the sticker was a cross and a little boy kneeling at the cross, and the name was Billy.
Wow.
And I knew that was God's confirmation to me that he is taking care of that little boy.
Excellent. Oh my goodness. So listen, Linda, I felt that story. I felt it myself. And I just believe that there is someone listening to this right now, and the weight will be lifted. And we just need to know that our loved ones are at peace, they're happy. And I heard you say he wanted you to be happy and no longer be sad. And I think that's like such a pivotal place. If we can just understand those pieces. I mean, I felt refreshed after that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sure that God will open up these various experiences for others as well, if they just ask. Now, why it took 45 years, I don't know. Maybe you know, but only God knows. So I'm just excited. So we see that we can get to the other side one day. We don't know when or when that final release will happen, that final breakthrough. Wow. Before my last question, anything else you want to say on that?
Well, I just want to encourage your listeners. As you're walking through that pain, just know that it's through the pain that God is building your character. And that character is about becoming more like him. I had a television host once ask me, why do you think it took so long? I said, well, maybe I'm just a slow learner. I don't know. But you know, God has a reason, and everybody's walk through grief and timing is different. It doesn't mean yours has to take 45 years. It may be a lot shorter, but I'll tell you one thing I do know, there are no shortcuts to grief. There aren't. It's basically being obedient, walking through. I mean, I would go many years when, you know, things were good, and I truly thought I was doing very well, and I was. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, maybe I'd see a little boy that was like his age or something, and it would just be like almost a knife going through me.
Yes.
It's so painful. But I just had to face that pain and move on. And that's what I would encourage your listeners as well. Don't be afraid of the pain, because I'll tell you, the fear will keep us stuck in our story. And that's the worst place you want to be, because when we're stuck in our story, we're controlled by our past. And we don't want to be there. I'll tell you, it was a costly journey for me to go through 2 years of therapy and come to complete healing. But I knew the biggest price I would ever pay would be to stay stuck in my story.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And one other thing I wanted to share with the audience, you're an international speaker. So I don't know whether it was the loss of your brother, Billy, that spurred this. Were you already speaking? Because I want people to still understand that all things do work together for good. So tell us more about what caused you to start this path, even to become this expert on storytelling.
Oh, well, thank you. This is talking about recovery and rising up. This is where it comes in, I'll tell you. I have been speaking. I've actually been speaking for many decades to many different groups, a lot of ladies' luncheons and retreats and those kind of things. But then I knew God was taking me to a new level. And 6 years ago, just a little more than 6 years ago, I was about to do my first story retreat. I do a 2-day retreat every year. And again, the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he said, now I'm going to give you a new mission. And I was a little nervous and I stepped back and I said, okay. And he said, I want you to impact 1 million people a year through story.
Okay.
And I thought, oh my goodness, 1 million people. I mean, that just felt so overwhelming. I had no idea where to start. And finally I said, God, if this is really you, then the best I can, I'm going to trust you to take me step by step and show me what to do. So that's when I founded Wealth Through Stories, and I developed a program. I continued on my story retreats. And then I knew, and the Holy Spirit had said to me right after he brought me to Complete Healing, he said, now it's time to write your book. And I thought, write my book? That had never once crossed my mind.
Okay.
And I said, I don't think I have enough information. You'd think in 5 years I would, right?
Yes.
And then he said to me, the little book, Heaven is for Real, was still sitting on my couch. And he said, well, how about one like that? And I said, yeah, I could do that. And so I did. Then I wrote my book, ended up writing several other books, have 3 bestsellers, international bestseller. And then the next year I thought, okay, that's about writing. Another big thing about story is telling your story. And I thought, what's the biggest stage I could get on? And for me, that would be the TEDx stage. Not that the audience is necessarily so big, but because it's on YouTube, it's opened up to the world.
Yes.
And so I stepped up, and God miraculously opened a door. And in a month, I was on a TEDx stage across the country in Florida.
Okay.
And even right now, it's getting over 100,000 views every 6 months.
Okay. Wow.
So it's been that. And then I relaunched last year. I relaunched my 3 bestsellers, and I got on 40 or 50 podcasts, on 3 national, actually one was international television shows, radio, magazines, newspapers. Many of them had over a million listeners.
Wow.
And so I knew, then God showed me. He said, I knew he was fulfilling the dream that he placed in my heart. And now I knew it was taking it to a level. This wasn't just about me telling my story. This is about helping others tell their story. And that's my biggest dream. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Listen, I'm just happy to be a part of such a great move that you are a part of, and just happy to just shine the light on some of the things that you're doing so even others will know about you. So thank you for that.
Thank you for this opportunity.
You are welcome. I'm just happy to be a part of it. So I agree that God will just take your pain and just turn it into something else. I never would have thought, even for myself, I would be hosting a TV show talking about loss. But of course, with the loss of my mother, God opens up doors for us, and he actually puts us on our missions for life. So thank you. Now, is there anything else that you would like to provide the listening audience?
You know what? I have a couple gifts that I would like to share with them. For those that are ready to work on their story and want to learn more, God opened up a new door for me this spring, and that was that I actually have my own show on a Roku station.
Okay.
And I will send you that information so they know how to get onto it. It's actually FTG, which stands for Fetch the Goodness Network.
Okay.
And then Through Stories. But I will send you that. The other thing is that I have a little tool, And it's 5 keys to finding your story that can impact millions. As well as I do 5-day challenges. There's no cost for it. And I will send the website as to where you can get on both of those tools. It's Wealth Through Stories /story-challenge. But I will send those to you. Like I said, you know what? There is a purpose for our loss. And like you said, all things work together for good to those that love God. And God will use that. Will use your loss to impact people that you have never imagined if you're willing just to walk through the process.
Yes. So Linda, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. It was so helpful, so insightful, so excited about what God is doing in your life. And again, just to be a part. So I thank you. And I just know that the audience has gained a lot of knowledge and insight today just from hearing your story. So thank you again. And I appreciate you just taking the time to come by and join this chat with me today on finding our way through loss and getting to recovery. Thank you again.
Thank you. My privilege.
So remember, you are not alone, but you are in the plan of God. When you are tempted to stop caring about life's experiences, take a look around and see how God is still spreading around His mercy and His grace to the world and to you. That means it is my time and your time to move forward and make your mark on this generation. Thank you for choosing to share your time with me on the show. Join me again the next time as we hear various life experiences of others who are living with loss. We will find our way through this. So let's take courage to rise, walk, recover together.
If you have enjoyed the show, you can also find us on Facebook and YouTube by searching for Courage, 2, Rise, Walk, Recover. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Courage, 2, RWR. And thanks for tuning in.